Chapter 17, Part 3, Baroque and Rococo. I'm backtracking just a little bit. I wanted to go over some images that I got from a different textbook just to kind of illustrate the Baroque a little bit more because I feel like we don't have enough photos here. So here's Caravaggio, and then I'm going to skip down and I put in a couple more images. This is Caravaggio here. Judith decapitating Holofernes, and this I feel like has a lot of drama and angular, motion, things happening, diagonals. She's cutting off Holofernes' head, and you have these really nicely three-dimensional arms. I feel like this old woman's face has really just so much detail and expression and shading, and you can just really get a sense that she's really there in the room. Another Gentileschi piece. So remember in our book, I'm going to backtrack, we have the Gentileschi, Artemisia Gentileschi piece post Holofernes' head being cut off. But this is her version of what's happening, during the murder. Very dramatic piece. I kind of prefer this painting in terms of the light and dark, the tenebrism, where you get this bright, light colors, these whites, and then all that black background. So the Baroque has really got that dark background. We're imagining things in this sort of brightly lit and then dark, receding areas. So it's kind of like that good and evil. Things are being illustrated in much more high relief in a sense. So it gives you a sense of implied three-dimensionality and implied texture and all that, and implied motion, because, there's just a lot going on here. It's more believable, if that makes sense. And then the Church of San Carlo alla Quattro Fontane. This has a little bit of a better shot on it, and then you can see the floor plan here is not our symmetrical cross plan, and it's not a circle. It's not, it's just kind of an oval shape with some irregular areas coming off to the side. So we've left the idea of the Renaissance with that perfect organization. And I did go ahead and I put in a picture of the Palace of Versailles. I think it's important to look at. Ours, we have, is there not even one in the book? But Versailles, oh yeah, there is. On page 396, 17.10, we have Versailles with King Louis XIV. So this is what starts to tip off the French Revolution and so on a bit later. So here we are in 1680, and then at the end of the 18th century, here we are in the 17th century. At the end of the 18th century, 100 some years later, that's when things start to fall apart. Partly because of the opulence and the display of this, and it becomes known. Of course, peasants from, all over France are not seeing this place, but they're hearing about it. So it's 200 acres, this massive garden and so on where the chateau is. And then the Hall of Mirrors is really the place that we're going to look at. Now, this is King Louis XIV, and look at his lovely legs, and he invented these high heels. So he, we believe, invented the high heel, although I think you see it earlier. But he invented this sort of shoe to highlight his legs and his calves. Vanity, right? And the hair and so on. I mean, he's amazing, really. It's quite astonishing. And he's in his 60s here. He's portrayed a bit younger at the height of his physique, when he would be younger, perhaps. This is an ermine cape. This is a tiny little weasel. This is probably 100 or so of the little creatures put onto his fur cape on that lining. And the ermine with the white with the black dots, that is the royal fur that you would wear, and that indicates that you have enough wealth to afford it. So ermine was only worn usually by royalty, and then of course we have our royal blue, and then we have the fleur-de-lis, which is his insignia, is his symbol, the lily flower, okay? And he's on the verge of the Hall of Versailles here, so that's partly why it's included. So there's the Versailles Hall that we're about to see here. Dun dun dun. The Hall of Mirrors is just one of those stunning achievements. Now, this has been preserved through various wars and so on, and it does symbolize the Baroque. And look at all that ornate, like just design work just to house these paintings and mirrors and so on. And it's like everything competes with all these different textures and designs. Look at the patterning on the marble. So expensive marble, bronze, gold leaf, chandeliers and light, sculpture here, all kinds of textured molding areas up here. We have this lovely barrel vault going all the way down. It's painted, every inch of it. Every inch of it is painted or decorated. There's not a surface left undone. So this is the Baroque. We get really into this heightened detail, kind of over the top, more than is needed. The eye cannot rest. It's overwhelming. Part of this impressiveness of this as well is these mirrors. So there's a mirror here and here. They're kind of lined up, with the windows. So the natural light is coming in here. There's also candlelight through here. This is electric now, I believe, but these were all candles. There's natural light reflecting off the mirror. So it was quite a bright, open space, which was unusual. But this was also to mimic the idea of Louis XIV as the Sun King, S-U-N, that the sun rises and sets with him, and he is the sun and the light. So that is why he's got so much light in here. Mirrors, you have to remember, up into the 20th century or late 19th century, all glass, including windows, were blown, meaning you would have like a hollow vessel and then you would sort of flatten it. And you have to keep it hot. And then with a mirror, you have to get the silver backing to stick to it. So it was a bit tricky to get a mirror in 1678. They were rare and small, and usually you just have one of them like this size in your whole house, and that showed wealth and prosperity. We saw a few in the Renaissance, those curved mirrors. We saw a few different things. Very tricky to have a successful mirror. So whenever that's the case with a product or a art form, you're going to pay for all the lost ones as well. So say only one of four survives, the artisans still need to be paid for those other three at the time of that. So that increases the price. So mirrors are very expensive, difficult to make, and he's just got wall after wall after wall after wall of mirrors. It's incredible. So just thinking about getting that perfected at that point in time, very, very challenging. The Treaty of Versailles in the 20th century, Treaty of Versailles was signed here, and this has been used even now as a meeting place for dignitaries. But at the time, it was meant to impress and overwhelm and have people become awestruck when they came in there, and of course they were. So it's opulent, and it also reflects the gardens that are in the exterior, those 200 acres. We can't forget about that. Forget about that. Okay, the Rococo. Here we go. So the first half to 3/4 of the 18th century is the Rococo, but we're starting to get into this time period where lots of stuff is overlapping, and not everybody buys into the Rococo. So the Rococo means rocks and shells. And we get into even more ornate and just fluffy, flowery, pale pastel colors. We have our mirrors again. And notice they're in segments. There's no way to make a big plate glass. Doesn't happen for another 200 years, I think, here. So, is that wrong? About 150 years. Plate glass is something that happened around World War II, a little bit after. But so each panel has to be made, same as these windows, so that's why you have those squares, because you can't make glass any bigger than that, really. Ornate chandelier, just think of all the dusting, my God, it just, every time I look at this, that's all I think about is like trying to keep this thing clean. But of course you had multiple servants and so on. But all this delicate stuff here and those leaves and all that, oh, it just boggles the mind. But pastel colors and